So Charlie Kirk is doing some tour where he's doing these speaking gigs all over the place. And one of his fans in the audience asks a very disturbing question about when it's okay to start killing leftists.
You're brave. You're brave for what you say and the fact that you stand up there and say it, and I appreciate it. I think we all appreciate it, actually, because there's not a lot of people that have the balls to do it. But I want to ask you something a little bit out of the ordinary. So, prepare yourself. At this point, we're living under corporate and medical fascism. This is tyranny. When do we get to use the guns? No, and I'm not, that's not a joke. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, literally, where's the line? How many elections are they going to steal before we kill these people?
So, no, no, hold on. No, stop, hold on. Now, I'm going to denounce that. I'm going to tell you why. Because you're playing into all their plans, and they're trying to make you do this. That's okay. Just hear me out. You started with a compliment, so at least give me a little bit. They are trying to provoke you and everyone here. They are trying to make you do something that will be violent, that will justify a takeover of your freedoms and liberties, the likes of which we have never seen. We are close to have, hold on, we are close to have momentum to be able to get this country back on a trajectory using the peaceful means that we have at us. So to answer your question, and I just think it's, overly blunt, we have to be the ones that do not play into the violent aims and ambitions of the other side. They fear, let me say this very clearly, they fear us holding the line with self-control and discipline, taking over school board meetings. They're the ones that are willing to use federal force against us. And I know that people get fired up. We are living under fascism. We are living under this tyranny. But if you think for a second that they're not wanting you to all of a sudden get that next level.
Woo! Oh boy. Okay, so let's go through this. He says we're living under corporate and medical fascism. We are living in a corporatocracy. We are living in an oligarchy and a kleptocracy. The billionaires run the show. The corporations run the show. And it is tyrannical and dictatorial in some very real ways. Can't downplay that at all. It's the reality. When he says we live under medical fascism, that's just wrong. Now, I assume what he's talking about is vaccine mandates, because that's the thing that all these people are against. But what's astounding to me is the outright war that has been waged on nuance in this conversation, because we don't have a hard vaccine mandate in this country. We don't. We have, from the Biden administration, what would be considered a soft mandate, because if you don't want to get the vaccine, you don't have to get it. You can get tested. And it's for businesses with 100 employees or more. Now, are there individual businesses that say, you have to get the vaccine, no excuses? Yes. That would be an issue you should take up with your individual business. It is. So if I hadn't had a business with 80 employees, let's say, my policy would be vaccine or test. That would be my choice to do that policy. If somebody has a business with 80 employees and they say, vaccine, no excuses, yeah, if you have an issue with that, you should speak up about it, you should talk to them about it, and you should maybe try to get it to vaccine or test. So the issue you have, that's not medical fascism. That's a corporation having a lot of control over you and your autonomy and your liberty and your freedom. And if you have an issue with that, well, my friend, welcome to leftism. Because, we've made the comparison a lot. It didn't come from me. I first heard it from Noam Chomsky. But it is true that corporations function as little tyrannies. You have the owner, who's like the emperor, and you have a manager underneath them. That's like, the person who runs the day-to-day, the boss. And then you have the workers underneath them, and you basically have to do whatever your bosses say. Now, I have a problem with that. I would like a much more democratic economy. And seems like, in this instance at least, the problem this person is highlighting would be solved by a more democratic economy. So if you have an issue with the hard vaccine mandates, take it up with the individual businesses, because they're the problem. Biden's policy, I think, is way more reasonable, a vaccine or test. Okay, that's my opinion on that. Now, he goes on to say, how many elections are we going to let these people steal before we kill them? So we need to kill these people. Well, I mean, you're kind of advocating for genocide there. So as a general rule, I'm anti-genocide. I know, hot take. If I'm being overly kind in my interpretation, which I shouldn't be, he says, well, why shouldn't we kill just the people who stole the election, so not the average Joe and Jane Democratic voters? again, I'm being way too kind in giving him that interpretation, but I'll grant him that interpretation here for a second. Even that is insane because the election wasn't stolen. People have been so thoroughly brainwashed by relentless propaganda. Guys, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to take the word of the 60 plus court cases. Trump lost every single one except like one, and the one that he won was over some procedural nonsense which wouldn't change the outcome anyway. They did the audit in Arizona, and they found out Biden won by more votes than they originally thought he won by. There is no reason, based on the evidence, to suggest Donald Trump won this election. He did not win this election. He lost the election. He did. So, based on a complete lie and misinformation, he's now in favor of murder, and he thinks that's justice. Well, that's a problem. And look, this is one of the issues with rampant misinformation, is this is leading people to extremism. Now, there's also material conditions leading people to extremism, and we shouldn't downplay that either. But, you know, listen, if you're One American News Network, if you're Newsmax, maybe those hosts are crazy enough to actually believe the bullshit. If you're a Fox News host, you know that Joe Biden won this election. If you're an elected Republican, I mean, there's been reporting on this behind the scenes. Every single elected, Republican congressperson, save maybe 3, know that Joe Biden won the election, and every single Republican senator knows Joe Biden won the election. Say that shit. Come out and say it if you're a Republican senator. Come out and say it if you're a Republican congressperson. Say enough with the nonsense, but they don't want to do it because they're afraid of Donald Trump's wrath, and they're afraid that they'll lose their next election. But listen, that point can't just be coming from the hacky liberal elite media assholes, because nobody likes them. Nobody likes CNN. Nobody likes MSNBC. Nobody should like them. And if they're the only one saying Joe Biden won the election, that's not going to convince people like this. You need like an all-of-the-above approach from every corner of the political conversation to be like, bro, look, you're wrong. Here's the evidence. Who's the one leading the charge now on this is a stolen election? The MyPillow guy. The MyPillow guy. And every time he has one of these events, he embarrasses himself. He doesn't show any evidence to conclude that Trump won. And they've changed the conspiracy like 3 or 4 times. Oh, it was Venezuela. Maduro hacked the voting machines and worked with the company, and that's what Maduro hacked the voting machine. And now they moved to, no, it's China. China did it. What a pathetic joke, man. So, look, just be careful. Like, nobody could say you're directly responsible if you're spreading the misinformation for violence that might happen as a result of it. But you certainly didn't help. There might be some borderline people out there who take your words and then go way too far with it. And you should look in the mirror over that and check yourself. And, you know, for somebody like Charlie Kirk, now his answer here was fine. He's like, don't do that. I denounce that. But then you can't go on to say, as he does, like, well, we are fighting fascists. No, you're not. And even in your attempt to talk the person down off the ledge, you're giving them more fuel to stay on the ledge. And that's a problem. That's a problem. I would say that when it comes to the culture war stuff, you got to turn down the heat. Turn it down. Because the fact of the matter is, and I'll end on this point, the fact of the matter is, yes, people in this country have massive disagreements on culture war stuff. People in this country have massive disagreements on social issue stuff. And maybe we're never going to see eye to eye on that stuff. It's fine. That's the whole point of living in a society. Having said that, there's way more agreement than you realize on the economic stuff and on improving people's material well-being. Sure, you have the cranks on either end of the spectrum that, might genuinely wish harm for the other team, but most Americans support people living a life with basic human decency, dignity, freedom, respect, and we just covered the story. 87% of Democrats support the unions that are currently striking for better working conditions, better wages. 72% of independents support the strikes, and even 60% of Republicans support the strikes. We're a lot closer together than people think. Living wage, in Florida, Trump won in the 2020 election. But getting a higher minimum wage got 60% of the vote in a direct vote. So the same people voted for Trump, some of them voted for a living wage. There's a lot more agreement than you think out there. There really is. Again, social issues we might never see eye to eye. Fine. Living wage, workers' rights, stopping outsourcing, ending the corruption, we do see eye to eye. We do see eye to eye, and that should be stressed. You know? The craziest asshole on the right would agree with the notion that corporations and billionaires shouldn't run our government and rig the political system in their favor. So we got to turn down the temperature, highlight the agreements that we have, and understand that we're not as far apart as people think we are. And unfortunately, the misinformation and the terrible rhetoric and the relentless lies about a stolen election have led some people to be too far gone. And this guy's one of them, where he's literally thinking about doing violence and killing people over a complete and utter falsehood. And that is an absolute tragedy, and it's dangerous. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.